Afternoon, early people. We'll start shortly. We'll wait for a few other people to enter the room, but um, as long as you keep your mics on mute, appreciate it. Afternoon, everyone. We'll just give it a few minutes and wait for folks to enter the room. As you enter, if you can turn off your video and keep your mics on mute until the Q&A. We'll look to start in about 2-3 minutes. Just wait for everyone to get their lunch or snacks together, and then we'll get started. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat if you feel so inclined. Let us know who you are, what organization you're from, as well as what your interest in zoning might be. All right, just another minute or so. Hi, Julie. Hi, Kyle in the chat. All right, it's just about 12:05. We'll look to get started. I'm joined by my other colleagues from Housing Forward Virginia, Flora Valdez de Pena, as well as Maria Doherty. They'll be watching the chat, watching the room and letting people in. But as we work through this, please keep your video off as well as your mics, and we'll hopefully have more discussion towards the end of this lunch and learn. So thanks for joining our intro to the Virginia Zoning Atlas. I'm Eric Mai, and I'm the state director for the Virginia Zoning Atlas, which is a major part of our ZONED initiative, which is our effort to help break down the complexity of zoning so that everyone can understand what it is and how it impacts housing affordability across the state. First off, I'd like to thank our sponsors, both of our organization as well as our work completing the Hampton Roads portion of the Atlas. Special thanks and shout out to Virginia Housing, the Mercatus Center at George Mason University, Williamsburg Health Foundation, the Hampton Roads Community Foundation, Centera, as well as Wells Fargo. So the zoning atlas is a major effort that will take thousands of hours to complete. We are still looking for major funders for the expansion of the atlas to other parts of the Commonwealth, which will help support paying additional analysts. If you want to see the atlas in your region and to see this work maintained and regularly updated, then please consider donating to the Virginia Zoning Atlas or consider volunteering your hours to help read through zoning code. So why are we talking about zoning? Well, as you can see in the headlines, zoning has become a lightning rod for discussions around affordable housing and the crisis we still continue to face across the nation, and especially here in Virginia. Even our governor has brought up zoning regulations and land use, in addition to President Biden. So obviously, zoning is clearly a big piece of the puzzle in addressing housing supply and affordability. And so that's why we are focusing on zoning education as well as the Virginia Zoning Atlas. What is a zoning atlas? Pretty simply, it's an interactive web map that shows zoning districts within a locality and how they treat certain types of housing development. For example, where can I build a duplex without a public hearing? Or where are accessory dwelling units allowed at all? What type of zoning districts are there in a community? How much land is mixed with residential or what is mixed use? Just as a kind of emphasis here, there's no central repository to find this information for all localities in Virginia. You have to go to each individual locality, look at their zoning ordinance, and then compare it to a map on another page. This makes it difficult for everyday Virginians to understand and visualize what zoning is or how it impacts housing in their communities. So why is this needed? Well, zoning isn't easy to understand. To understand what can be done by right, what requires a public hearing, what's prohibited, you have to look for language that states such, or if you're lucky, find a use table like this. This is a use table for the city of Hampton that describes what's allowed in each of these zoning districts, what's prohibited, or what requires a public hearing. Then you might have to find additional standards or regulations for particular types of uses, which are likely in a different section of the code. Then you got to go check on the map to see where those zoning districts are mapped. Then maybe do some calculations for what's required for parking, or yard sizes, which can include some quite complex and cumbersome language, like here in Hampton. Calculating a side yard, you need to calculate the depth of 2 side yards on any lot shall total at least 25% of the lot width, measured at the front setback line. Additional language here gets overly complicated for just kind of an everyday person to understand. Okay, what does the distance need to be on the side of my house? Maybe this adds a little bit of job security for planners and land use attorneys, but I think for everyday Virginians and housing advocates, this can be really difficult to understand and also communicate with community members as well as elected officials. So what's the National Zoning Atlas and what are its goals? The National Zoning Atlas, led by Sarah Bronin out of the Cornell Legal Constructs Lab, seeks to collect all of this information on zoning and standardize it. This makes it easier to understand, but also allows us to better make comparisons across the state, across the nation, and provide us with valuable information on zoning's impact on residential development. The first zoning atlas was in Connecticut and has since spawned a national effort with over a dozen states with atlas projects completed or in progress. Okay, so what does it take to make one? Well, lots and lots of reading of zoning ordinances. There's geospatial work to map zoning districts and tons of review. It is really daunting work and takes time to understand the different ways in which localities write and interpret their zoning codes. They're zoning ordinances that are decades old, that still use a lot of legal jargon, that don't use any kind of visual aids. There are some that use dated language that makes it really difficult to interpret what was the main purpose of it. And on top of that, many localities have just kind of compounded the language by continuously adding amendments to their zoning ordinance without doing a comprehensive rewrite. So this is a really important piece of the zoning atlas. In order to make these comparisons between states, regions, or localities really requires a rigorous adherence to common definitions and interpretations. This is what makes the zoning atlas possible. This is how we can make those distinctions or comparisons between different localities and compare zoning codes between a city of Richmond compared to a city of Newport News or a city of Bristol. So as you see the zoning atlas releases over the coming months, it's really important to keep in mind these things. Our analysis uses a methodology that may conflict with your interpretation of your community's zoning ordinance. For example, we analyze how zoning ordinances treat one-family housing. You may immediately think that this is only single-family detached, but based on the methodology, it also includes townhomes and even duplexes if each unit sits on its own lot. For ADUs, the methodology also includes caretakers' dwellings associated with non-residential uses. So think of a watchman's home that is related to a manufacturing facility, or even a single residential unit above a shop in a historic downtown. The methodology treats these as ADUs. These are just a few of the things to keep in mind before you cry foul or shout at us that we got something wrong in the atlas. But also keep in mind that we're human and we make mistakes. So even after reviewing zoning ordinances multiple times, it's possible that we got something wrong. But we're also collecting additional information to capture these nuances and ensure that we can answer our questions accurately. Like we are also asking how many districts limit the type of housing only to single-family detached. So what will the zoning atlas actually show? The current methodology is focused on how local zoning ordinances impact residential uses that are available to the general public. It shows where those districts are mapped, their requirements, whether it's allowed by right or requires a public hearing, and what type of zoning district it is. Here you can see a snapshot of the Hampton Roads zoning atlas. In purple, that's zoning districts that are primarily residential. In the teal there, that's mixed with residential. And then the blue is non-residential. So it's important to understand what the atlas also doesn't show. Zoning is just one piece of the puzzle. You obviously don't want to build housing on a 60-degree slope or build very dense housing where there's no infrastructure to support that housing. In addition, there are other factors that impact what can be built, like public input through the comprehensive planning process or building codes. But it's incredibly important that local residents understand how all of these things impact other aspects of their community, like affordability, equity, and economic opportunity. As you see more about the zoning atlas, you may ask, okay, what about this or what about that? And you may shout at us to say that we missed something. We're totally aware of some other aspects of housing that the National Zoning Atlas methodology doesn't currently account for. Things like group homes and shelters are not included in the analysis. In addition, manufactured homes are not treated differently from single-family detached homes, but manufactured homes are an important part of the affordable housing equation. Some of you may be asking for the atlas to do more, like tell us where are the opportunities for redevelopment within a community, and I'll let you know that we're keenly aware of all of these things, and we have aspirations to include additional analysis in the future to expand the zoning atlas as a resource. But we are focusing on the current iteration of the methodology. This streamlines the work and also builds awareness and momentum for the zoning atlas. There are undoubtedly many different directions we can take the atlas, but it's important to consider our capacity and resources. Again, if you want to see more, then please consider donating to the atlas or volunteering your time to help. So why should you care about this work? Zoning atlases help provide new data to inform policy decisions. Questions like how much developable land is being held back from development due to the approval process? How much land can be developed as mixed use to support more livable communities? It is also an important part of making zoning more accessible and engaging. Anyone can easily use the atlas to understand how zoning is impacting housing in their community. But as you can see, zoning atlases are entering the national discourse. They have become a valuable tool to not only make zoning more accessible, but also to aid in considerations of zoning reform. Particularly in states like Montana, their zoning atlas was led by the Frontier Institute, and it directly aided state legislators to approve bipartisan statewide zoning reform. We really hope that the zoning atlas here in Virginia will serve as a valuable resource like you, and hopefully to advocate for more abundant housing opportunities, but also to serve as a tool to aid in land use policy research. That was pretty quick. Again, I want to thank the sponsors for this work. Please consider becoming a part of this work, volunteering your time or donating. And I guess now I want to open it up for questions or comments. And I'll also mention that that we are doing an event on October 13th in Chesapeake at the Hampton Roads PDC, where we will be revealing the Hampton Roads zoning atlas. So if you're willing and able, please come down to Chesapeake and see the results, or you can wait until after October 13th, and we'll share our findings with the rest of the state.
Hi, so I see that we have one question in the chat. I can go ahead and speak that out loud for everybody. Ileana, I think is your name, asked, you mentioned that ADUs are also apartments above retail. What is the difference of that with a mixed use, which is retail plus residential? Is it the number of units above retail? What is the criteria?
That's right. It's the number of units above retail. So if it's only a single unit above a retail use or commercial use, then it's considered an accessory use to that principal use. Yep.
Folks, feel free to unmute yourselves also if you have some pressing questions, or drop them in the chat as well.
So Helen has a question in the chat. How can federal agencies use this tool to allocate resources? Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And I know that the National Zoning Atlas has been talking to HUD and the White House, or at least some federal agencies about this work. So the national, they're very aware of this at the national level. And I think with some of Biden's plans to kind of think about how do we incentivize communities or penalize, maybe penalize localities that aren't zoning for housing. This is a valuable tool to kind of understand how what reform looks like or what changes to a zoning code can look like. And so a big benefit of the zoning atlas is that it's kind of this point in time snapshot of what zoning is like in a community. And so say that there is a comprehensive rewrite a couple years down the line, we can see how a community might be zoning better for housing or maybe becoming more restrictive. And I think given kind of where the national discourse is, this kind of creates those ability to kind of benchmark how is zoning performing.
Yes, and Harrison had a question about what does helping out entail? And I can say if you have skills with GIS mapping and analysis, where that could be a useful way to help out. If you have experience reading through codes, you have land use knowledge. We are always looking for help because there are hundreds and hundreds of pages to go through all throughout the state, maybe more thousands. And so I guess helping out would look like learning the methodology from us and assisting us with this work throughout the state. And so we've had Christopher Newport University students help us with the Hampton Roads area, and we're more than happy to chat with you about what that would look like in more detail. Is there any other thing I missed, Eric, about helping out?
Yeah, exactly. Harrison, I see you're from Culpeper County. If you're a planner there, yeah, helping out. Yeah, exactly. Translating counties ordinances into the tool that we use to input this data, that would be incredibly helpful. I guess the only issue that we've encountered with getting kind of planner feedback is that how you are interpreting your zoning ordinance may not align with how the methodology is. So it does take quite a bit of reading the methodology, understanding how things are defined in the methodology first before inputting data. But yes, we welcome any help like that.
Kyle, hi Kyle. Kyle's question is, how is the zoning atlas addressing climate change or resiliency changes, especially in the Hampton Roads region? For those of you that might not be from Virginia that are with us today, the Hampton Roads region is a really populated coastal area of the state. So the regional plan looks at both zoning, future land use, and future migration assumptions. I'd be interested to see how these housing areas look. The zoning atlas right now does not really address climate change. That definitely we've seen in the codes, especially we've seen in all of them, but especially Norfolk, lots of new zoning that's been occurring as a result of trying to think about resiliency strategies for the future. So I think that's something that we definitely are interested in incorporating more. But as Eric said, there's so many different parts of zoning that can be added, and we're kind of starting right now at just tracking residential uses and where they are and that sort of thing. And so folks that have more experience, especially in those areas, we'd love to chat with and bring on and kind of creating more detail as we can continue this work.
Yeah, I'll add to that specifically for Hampton Roads, when we are doing our analysis, I think we'll carry this on to the rest of the state, is that we've eliminated, I guess, areas of water or wetlands that are more than a certain amount of area to account for what is actually developable. We don't want to develop in wetlands or areas of water, but we also want to consider, sea level rise and things like that. And so I think as time progresses, as resources increase, we can add to these other nuances that really impact housing, and especially in those kind of regional contexts, especially like in Hampton Roads. I know there's been some great mapping done around sea level rise in Hampton Roads, and so we'd love to incorporate that into the atlas.
Yeah, I know Kyle's been doing some of that great mapping. So thanks for your question and for joining
Yeah.
us.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Alice, are you getting any pushback from localities who may be reluctant to change their current zoning?
I have not yet heard any pushback yet. I'm sure there might be, but I think that regardless, this is an important tool that helps people better understand what zoning is and how it's impacting their community. I think for those who may be averse to maybe zoning reform or changes, yeah, it may happen, but I think this also provides those advocates within those communities, developers, builders, nonprofits, with the kind of ammunition and support they need to kind of maybe push their local government or local officials to rethink certain things. I think when you look at certain localities, you might be surprised at how much how little you can actually do by right in certain communities.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I think maybe there's also pushback that stems from just a lack of knowledge or understanding about what zoning actually is doing, maybe with the general public. And I think hopefully formatting it in a way that's accessible to the public will demystify some things and maybe, yeah, provide more information that helps people make better decisions and discussions about zoning. So.
Yeah, I guess I'll add that, I really want this to be, a resource, a data resource, maybe somewhat policy neutral, but also kind of, as Housing Forward Virginia, I think we would love to see localities zoned for housing. So, if localities are interested in talking about how to do that, we can help with that. But I think the information can kind of speak for itself, the data.
Yeah, great question so far. Thank you. Any other questions? Keep them coming. Unmute or pop in the chat. Hi, Ileana. Can you maybe speak a little bit more about your comment? That's very interesting.
Ileana might. Okay, yeah. Well, yeah. Let's just put our emails in the chat. You can follow up with us there. Good question, Julie. Are there any localities in Virginia that are models or making significant progress? I think the city of Richmond might be a good model right now. I think that some of their major things that are happening in zoning here in Virginia are that they are eliminating parking minimums. They're allowing ADUs by right, accessory dwelling units by right. And I think just yesterday, they passed ADUs by right in Planning Commission, and soon that will go to the City Council. Arlington is also a great model as well. They recently passed their missing middle, which allows for kind of more diverse housing by right in certain areas. Thinking about duplexes, triplexes, and kind of fourplexes, which are typically more affordable. Yeah, I would say those are some key ones. If you want to look at, particular zoning ordinances that are pretty nice and maybe a little bit easier to understand, Henrico County recently did one a few years back. Theirs is very visual, as well as kind of very direct and to the point. So I'd recommend looking at those.
Yeah, Norfolk I would also recommend. And I'll also just pop in the chat. We have to update this constantly, so there's still some things we can add to it, but we are keeping a zoning reform tracker on our website, which is another place that you can look for, models and examples of what's new in the world of zoning and who's doing what in terms of reform.
Jennifer has this question in the chat. As part of the process, are you accounting for unused, underused, inactive agricultural land near towns and rural areas, or focus just on those zoned for residential? To answer that question, we're just focusing on zoning districts and how they are treating residential uses. I think that we would love to do kind of parcel level analysis for some select localities. I think that would be really interesting thing for us to consider doing. I know that I've had some comments and questions for people asking us to look into underutilized retail and commercial for infill redevelopment opportunities. And so I think that the data provided by the Virginia Zoning Atlas can be used to kind of overlay over top of those parcels and do kind of more robust analysis. And so all the data that we provide in the Virginia Zoning Atlas will be open for use. And so if you and your locality want to use it, you're totally free to use the data that we create and provide.
Yeah, I think Helen's question has a similar answer. Like Eric said, we're just kind of looking at the ordinances and looking at existing mapping files. And so those are in pieces like demographics would need to be maybe added later with different information. And it's definitely things that we're interested in doing, but it's not in the current iteration right now.
Yeah, I'll say that we're creating our own web application. And so we hope to layer additional kinds of data over that, whether it be kind of racial makeup of particular census tracts. And I think Arlington did this especially well with their missing middle study. They showed where single-family detached districts are and how that compares to majority white or majority BIPOC census tracts. And I think that is a useful thing for us to continue to do. That's something that we'll likely do as we do analysis for each of the regions. Yes. In terms of, Ashley was asking about repeating what I stated about missing middle. Yeah, Arlington has been really kind of proactive in zoning reform, especially in creating missing middle opportunities, which are more kind of attached townhomes, more kind of condo style duplexes and triplexes and quadplexes. And so they passed recent ordinances in their community to allow for that without a public hearing in certain areas. And so they are a great model for what zoning reform could be. And I think a lot of that kind of diverse housing opportunities are really needed in many different parts of the state. Oleana asked, does the atlas include leftover racial covenants, current and or expired dates of racial-based covenants? No, it doesn't. It only includes what is in current zoning ordinances. And so we're not accounting for anything like that may exist, that may be at the parcel level or address level for certain addresses, or in certain neighborhoods or things like that. But no, we're strictly focusing on a localities zoning ordinance. Jennifer is asking, how are you defining districts? These are zoning districts within a locality. And so each locality in Virginia, I think except for the county of Floyd, has zoning, and so they can create zoning districts that regulate particular uses within their community. So think of you may see on a map things like R4 or B3. Those are the zoning districts that we're analyzing for this work.
Yes, and then within each of those districts, the methodology, the tool basically asks, how do you treat these different housing, one family, two family, multifamily. So without going into too much detail, hopefully that answers your question about definitions and districts in the tool.
Yeah, I guess I'll just maybe share, what this actually looks like, at scale. And so, this is, what a zoning atlas would look like. This is what it does look like. This is Hampton Roads. It takes a while to render because it's a lot of data, but here in Norfolk, we've mapped and analyzed all of the zoning districts. And so what I'm showing right now is, okay, where in Norfolk can I build 4+ family housing without a public hearing? This is important to see because, what's allowed by right or without a public hearing avoids opposition at public hearings. It avoids the kind of not in my backyard opposition that often comes to public hearings. And so here I can show where can I build without a public hearing 4+ family housing in Norfolk. And then there's also this calculation here that shows that only in 20% of Norfolk can I, build that type of housing without a public hearing. And so this is the kind of context and data that we're bringing to localities and to regions. The atlas is not publicly available yet. We will launch at least the Hampton Roads region in October. But I think that this will, we hope to expand this work to other parts of the state. And so hopefully, it'll come to your region soon enough. Okay. Well, I think we're kind of hitting our threshold of questions here. If you have any other questions, do feel free to reach out to myself or Maria, who have been working on the atlas. Again, we'll put our emails in the chat. But thanks for joining us. Thanks for the questions. If you want to learn more, please sign up for our mailing list. Yep, thanks for those comments, Harrison and Jennifer. We appreciate it. Thank you, Julie. And we'll look forward to showcasing more about what the zoning atlas is. We'll have a lot more to show in October once we have the map, but we just wanted to kind of introduce people to what a zoning atlas is and what it can do. So thanks for joining us. Have a great afternoon.
And I did put the link in the chat to register for the Hampton Roads Zoning Atlas Forum next month, October 13th. It's Friday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Hampton Roads PDC offices in Chesapeake. Tickets are $10. There is a free lunch provided and light refreshments as well. at that event. So please sign up, come learn more. And one more time, thank you to our sponsors, especially Virginia Housing, Hampton Roads Community Foundation, Mercatus Center, Centera, Wells Fargo, and other sponsors. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Flora.